Going live with this. Huh. I have a feeling it's going to be all sideways, right? Sorry, I should have adjusted this first. I think for live I have to be oriented this way, I think. Alright, I'm working on a Powers cover. This is for one of the collections. Camera's slightly at an angle, so I'm sorry that the image might be a little bit distorted. Pretty much just gonna ink and probably keep my mouth shut, just so that I can concentrate on what I'm doing. This is for one of the new collections from Dark Horse. I'm just gonna go right into it. Look at this. Get right into the middle. Exterior line's a little sloppy, but I'm not going to sweat it too much. I can touch it up and digitally. Walker's going to be a big silhouette here. I'm also dealing with some eye issues. I've been having just a whole lot of pretty out of control eye strain. Has to do with all the screens I'm using and getting old. Got more optometrist appointments. Oh, also like during pandemic, where I usually go to my optometrist, they don't do the lenses there, but it's all filled out by the optometrist, the prescriptions, and then they send away for it and it comes back, so I know it's absolutely right. But they had closed all that down during the pandemic, so what that means was I was using Glasses USA or something, and they're great for affordable frames, and I guess if you really understand how to fill out your own prescriptions, but I kind of had some issues, and I'm just not sure that they're just the right lenses after a couple $100s of expenses. So I've got another appointment, and this time I'll just talk to them directly about, where's the best place to get these lenses taken care of. And if any of you have had issues with that sort of thing, please say so in the comments. I'll feel better. And it probably doesn't help that I keep switching back and forth between different glasses because I'm trying to figure out, some things are better for details, some things are better for the screens, and I think it's all it's fucking with me. Using this Karatuki, I'm not saying that right, brush pen. They're refillable and I love them. I'm going to ink most of it with this and these Bemoji pens. I'll see if I can put some links in below if I don't get too lazy. Well, let's not say lazy. Let's say if I have time for it. As you can tell, I haven't uploaded anything in a very long time. It's just busy, busy, busy. There's work and being a caretaker and all that stuff. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this mouth or not. I'll leave that little teeny tiny line there. We'll see what it looks like. It's all done. I also don't know why I tend to just start out right with sort of the important parts. You know, you'd think I would want to warm up. Hopefully it's not some form of arrogance on my part. I don't know what it is, but like I just like getting, like I'm so excited to ink stuff. I just want to get right into the stuff that I love, which is Walker and Dina. I love them. The idea is there's this alien creature back here is going to be all the lights coming from here. I mean, if it works out, it's going to be pretty graphic. If it doesn't work out, you'll see it not working out right here with me. You'll find out when I do. This is all almost, I think I'm just going to keep this all blacked out. I'll play around with how much details we can see, and if whether it works or not, you know, then I'll touch it up digitally to decide, did it work? Did I make a fool of myself? I don't know. Fill in Walker's face real quick just so it looks nice. I also don't know that we'll have time to finish this whole cover on here or not, but at least you guys will just see a chunk of it. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know I typically don't finish, like fill in all the black. It just takes forever. So usually I just put big X's in there and then I'll come back to it when I decide to sell the piece, you know. Also, if you're listening, I don't monetize my channel. And I'm always listening to music, so I've got like my one headphones in right now and I'm listening to stuff. I'm just never clear on like copyright claims. Like if it's free, I think it's okay if the music's playing and I don't get charged. I don't know. Not charged, hit with, you know, copyright claim and they pull it down or stuff. I don't know how does that work? Let me know. I mean, I kind of doubt you guys want to hear whatever I'm listening to anyway, so. Right now I'm listening to Acid Ghosts. It's kind of like synthwave, chill, relaxed stuff. Sort of along the lines of like Washed Out and Wild Nothing, that sort of stuff. Another thing I really, really hate about, I shouldn't say hate, but I've gotten spoiled with digital, which is I don't have to wait for ink to dry. And I've had several experiences lately where I've been inking and I smear on the page. It was for a blue book cover and right over the face. Speaking of like health stuff too, I've also been experiencing a lot of fun with what I think is a pinched nerve in my shoulder, and it causes like pain that rises from the back of my neck, from my shoulder, back of my neck, across my head and into my eyeball. It's so fun. But seeing the doctor for it all, and it is I looked up like all the symptoms, and it is most likely a pinched nerve, just even like a pretty well-known thing for it. And I've been doing a little bit of exercises and stretches that I found online. So this kind of combination of pinched nerve and eye strain has been so not fun lately. Otherwise, doing all right. Doing lots of work. Very happy with the work. Working with great people. Brian and Tuck and I have a new project we've been working on. Having a blast on Blue Book. I feel very, very blessed. Very lucky. This is not an easy industry to make a living in. And I still got to work plenty hard, but I have the work, and I am so grateful. And so lucky that I largely can get away with working on my own projects as opposed to relying strictly on work for hire. And I really do enjoy work for hire work, but you can't guarantee it. You know? Right now, old school Kasabian is playing. Details like this with this brush is a little tricky, but it's worth it. I could easily just use like a very thin pen, and I'm sure that pen would be fine. But you get a little more bounce, obviously, with the thickness and thinness of brush. I'll probably handle some of these details. The very small micron. One of these Pigma Microns. They're still my favorites. Pit pens are really good too, but there's something about the Pigma Microns where they just don't, I don't know, they give enough give, but they're not too bouncy. In fact, I think all of that I'm going to handle with the Micron. I originally intended him to be all silhouette and her to be just a negative silhouette, but I think with part of her body popping out here, it's important to actually show her details. I mean, and I can always decide to change it later. Like, I'm not happy with that foot. We'll see what happens when I do some details with the pen. In fact, let's do that now. Hold on. And I really should get new pens. This one's pretty beat up. I also tend to hoard pens, like it's the apocalypse is coming. And now some of them are starting to dry out on me just because I brought so many years ago. You know, in case. In case what, you ask? End of the world. I still want to draw. So I have to have a lot of pens. Oh, I don't like the way this is working. Her neckline and this part of her shirt. Not a big deal. I can fix it later. when you hear me say you can fix it in Photoshop or anything like that, back in the day, you could fix it. Usually it would involve whiteout, which is more of a process and could result in problems. Or photocopy it and then fix it on a photocopy, and there are ways to do it. So it's not like suddenly things don't matter and you just take wild chances. But it feels a lot safer, at least. All right, now listening to How Long by Ace. If you're old, you'll know, or you can ask your grandparents. I have a very wide taste in music, and I like putting on a shuffle and just hearing some crazy ass contrast. Something old and chill next to something obnoxious and loud. It's always fun. I'm not sure if I planned this hand positioning out as good as I should have. Let's see what happens. I might have spoken about this before, but I just don't believe in being a. I think perfection is the enemy when you're working. Pardon me. I know every time I've tried to quote my best on something, it came out less than. There's a looseness, I guess, to just letting it be what it has to be and working with the mistakes. There's been a few times where I had really big gigs and I just worked so hard on everything. I just sucked the life out of it. I don't like the way this is working. It's not horrible. It's just not what I want. And I can fix that in post. I'm trying to think of some examples of it. Well, actually, I don't want to say because I don't. One of the things that I've learned over the years is there are times where I'll draw something that I'm not happy with, but other people are really loving. And if I say that there's a problem with it, then that could lessen it for that person, you know? They might suddenly see what I see, or just feel like it's been devalued for them in some way. Kind of hard to explain. All right, so here's an issue. Like, my glasses are just not super strong enough to get these details on her face. It's very blurry to me, very out of focus. So I am really going by feel here. It worked out. Now I can see it a little bit better. And if that sounds like, that I can barely see it, well, I can see it fine. Just not. I wish I had like 10% more focus on it or something. Remember, I've been doing powers for 20 years. I could literally draw Walker with my eyes shut. Not great, but I just know the feeling in my hand as I'm drawing him. I know the feeling of Dina's face when I'm drawing her. In the sketch, I was really happy with how graphic this is. But now with more details in here, I'll have to question myself as I go, like, how much to pull back, how much I actually need to keep in. Like, I think I'm going to keep some light on the front of his gun and his hands here, but then the rest will just be black. Pigma Microns are my favorites. The number 1 micron I use for 2 things. Usually this is for borders, and I can tell once they get beat up, I kind of scratch them up, so I know that this is the tip on it is just all kind of fucked. But it's great for if I'm doing outlines on the panels. And then this is just, I love doing, like, this is like a shading line. Feels very brushy, but it's small. And it's, I don't know, it reminds me of Toth's, kind of Alex Toth's way of words, rendering shades and stuff. I also like to use as much freehand as possible, depending on the thing. There's an energy to freehanding lines that die with a ruler, especially digitally. But maybe that's just me, like I said, I don't like perfection in my work. I like it being slightly abstract and ugly. I've heard people call my work ugly, and I don't argue with them. I don't get defensive. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like some ugly drawings. That's where some of the magic comes in. It's you're leaving parts of the art to the viewer, and just figuring out how to get the right energy. That's what's important to me. Right now, some Cat Stevens is playing. I used to sing this song, Moon Shadow, to my son when he was going to sleep. And then one day as he got older, he started to really hear the lyrics and asked me to stop. It's just about being grateful for life, and if he loses your hands, you won't have to work anymore. If he loses your mouth, you won't have to talk anymore. And he was like, what? Yeah. Beautiful song, but That's the sound of M&M's. So, one of the things I'm considering is I might want to have this all black, but I'm not sure because it's just weird with his outfit back here. So I'm probably just going to leave it open for now, and I'll play around with it in Photoshop. Alright, so here's some of the rendering that I like with this pen. Turn that down because it's not great for my eyes. Look at that. See, I like it. Then I'll add like little chunks, little textures. I'll do a couple of these thick brushes, pens, and then I'll go in with a Uniball is one of my favorite pens too for inking. This is the ones I said was drying out. See, but it gives just a different feel. New song by one of my favorite bands, Craft Spells. It's nice and chill. Well, if this is going to be black, if I do that in black, I'm going to need variations here to give a sense of depth. So this can definitely be blacked out. I'm not going to fill it out for now. I'm just going to do that. Maybe I'll use a bit of brush because if I take the time to ink it in fill it in with brush, I can leave little chunks of white in there, and it gives a sense of gravel. especially if I make sure that the fuck it here. If I make sure that the bits of weight that are showing are more horizontal, see if it fits with the shape, the form of the floor, so we know that it's flat and not going like straight down or at an angle and stuff. And it just gives a sense of depth and texture. Good enough. Yeah, not the best example, but there you go. Now I do feel that whether this is going to be black or not, for this, I'm going to need some shading here. One of the things I like about this particular pen is that it leaves a sharp line, but it's not super sharp. Like if I use a Pigma Micron to do kind of that jaggy, knife-looking Mignola, this kind of stuff, that is slightly dulled, and it just gives it more of a chunky sense of it's not so smooth. Whereas if you do, if I did the lines kind of like this, and this is still kind of thick, so it still has this effect, but I think you can see it does leave just a difference in, this feels smoother, I guess you could say. Yeah, that feels smoother and colder than this. And because this is stone or cement of some kind, I wanted to have some texture, some chunk to it. If this was a glass building, that would be different. I'm going to leave all this in here for now until I kind of figure out what I want to do. Sometimes what I'll do is just play around with it in Photoshop, just dropping buckets of black on another layer, and it'll reveal to you what contrasts are working, or some surprising amount of black spotting. Sometimes that means eradicating a lot of work. But if it's for the better result, then fine. Like this whole hand might go. Fine. If that makes for a better piece. Alright, I'm getting a little more coffee before it's too late. These figures are really small, so I'm going to go Pigma Micron on these guys. Micron and probably the Uniball pen, which I love. I tend to use cheap products, except for these brushes, the Karatuki brushes. They're more expensive, but I don't know. I like accessible, easy to get tools. I used to drive 40 minutes to an hour to different art stores to get the right brushes and all that, and I can't do that anymore. I got shit to do. Not so much places to be, but shit to do. Alright, right now we got New Orders playing. I have shaky feelings about the way this is going to turn out. But you can't be afraid, man. You know? I'm sure you've had the same thing where you're like, oh man, this figure is it's got to be perfect, it's important. Nope, just do it. If you freak yourself out, you're just not going to get it done. And there are ways to work with mistakes. Or lines that are not optimal. Meh. Okie dokie. I can live with this. I'm always surprised at how popular Retro Girl is. Whatever the incarnation is of her, she remains a consistent favorite. I like her. But I'm pleasantly surprised at how much everybody else does. So all these lines I'm laying down right now are pretty flat, which A would be fine because these are smaller figures, but then I'm going to go back over these and add thickness and variation. This spot's getting tough again with my eyes. This always feels weird. You're only seeing 3 of her fingers here. Obviously, she has 4. It's big enough that I feel like it needs some lines in there to indicate fingers, but not so big I can easily fit all 4 in there. So just 3. Not that she's a Smurf or anything, but it just I don't know. Sacrifices you have to make, and the advantages of being cartoony and slightly abstract. See, that probably works. I probably should have just done it like that. I don't know. My line work got a little sloppy in here. Not sloppy because I don't care. Just, you know, even for somebody who's been drawing this stuff for 20 years, it's hard sometimes. Kind of have the cape flopping up this way, and then kind of coming down under her on the side. No particular reason. Just want to try something different. So if the light's coming from this way, it should technically be lit mostly like thicker lines on this side of her, on her front facing side. Let me see. I'm going to make this part of her leg black. I think that's fine if it's black. But more important than the lighting on the inking for the small figure here is to just give it weight. So I'm going to have most of the light really actually coming from the top, which means thicker lines along the bottom here. I know in Photoshop I'm going to fill this in black and it's going to look better than these lines here. So, one of my favorite sayings in comics was from Wally Wood a billion years ago. Said, When in doubt, black it out. Maybe that's why there's so much black on my page. Sometimes to add weight, you just need a little tiny, little bit, just a little bit can go a long way. She has gloves, fingerless gloves, so. Like eye strain makes depth perception really hard, because a lot of times you wouldn't think there's depth perception in, well, there's, I mean, obviously there's a lot, because you need to know how far, and you're talking, I don't even know the terms for how close, like, a hair's width your pen is away or isn't away from the paper, and when you're having minor eyesight problems, that gets tricky. This is really sloppy looking in here. Not in a way that I'm proud of. But, you know, what am I going to do? You got to just keep moving. And I encourage you to do that. You make mistakes. Don't go like, oh no, I fucked it up. I got to start over. Sometimes you start over, but that's pretty rare. And when I start over, I typically, it's in the drawing process, and I start over like a completely new idea. Because typically, if something isn't working, it's because I set up my drawing. I just didn't think of the foundation strongly enough. Or the concept is, I'm trying too hard for the concept, but I'm just not pulling it off, and then you get stuck in these thought circles and frustration. So, you know, that's the times I'll just start over. Like, yeah, but that's not an issue here. So that's a little tiny figure. I think it's fine. Not in love with it. Don't hate it. It is acceptable. Take it easy on yourself. Work with your mistakes. Not in love with the cape. No, especially that line. It's weird, a little line that can make or break. I just got a notification here, my battery's running low, so. But looks like we're still recording. So let's going to tackle this, and then I'll tackle the rest of Walker's figure, and then we'll do backgrounds and these other little figures a little bit later. All right. Trip hammer's metal, so I'm going for slightly more angular, sharper features on features, sharper contours. Ugh, I don't like that. Like he's got these kind of chunky knob things. These Dave Johnson like stud protrusions. Dave Johnson is, I consider, one of the best designers in comics, period. One of the best cover artists, period. And I'm lucky enough to have known him not just as a pal, but like back in the 90s, we would spend the nights as we're working late, faxing each other, and he was just full of knowledge and tips. He really helped me with my black spotting. One of the things he told me was just to make every page 50% black. Just try and make everything 50% black. And sometimes I translate that into the figure work as well. Like I'll make sure like half of the figure is black, half of the page is black, half of every object should be black. And I fail most of the time on it, and that's okay, because what that is, it's not a mandate, but it's a compass. It's a direction for me. And anyway, these little stud things, my pal Dave. All right, I'm going to fake this hand here. if you notice, I draw hands or fists the same way a lot, with this sort of like thumb finger protruding. It's a great way to sort of indicate a hand without having to get tied up in the details of the actual shape of it, the actual anatomy. And that's something weirdly I learned from Bill Sienkiewicz, of all people, or Sienkiewicz. Oh, here's that creepy song, Moonshadow, that scared my son. Anyway, there's some collection to the Phoenix Saga, and he did the cover, and I remember looking at the way he drew these fists, or maybe it was from some of his New Mutant stuff, or a combination, and it would just be like kind of a square or rectangle and just indicate this thumb sticking out, and he would paint it a lot, so it was just sort of flat and completely worked, and I didn't understand what he was doing or how he was doing it. But now I understand it's about a minimum composition of just indicating shapes that the eye fills the rest out. He's an abstract artist, like a cartoonist. It's weird how much I have in common. I'd say more with more with Bill Sienkiewicz's work than even somebody like Art Adams. And art is the reason why I became a comic book artist. He really, really is. I was a kid, and I was digging comics, and then I got my hands on, and I was interested in drawing comics, but I wasn't thinking anything more than this. I'm tracing Web of Spider-Man or whatever it was I was able to get my hands on. And then one day I saw X-Men Annual 9, and it just changed my life. And New Mutants Annual 2, kind of the only books I can name issues of, because it was so impactful in my life, and I would photocopy pages and trace them, blow them up and trace and get vellum and ink and imitate. I would just imitate Art Adams all the time. I wanted to be the first Art Adams imitator. I had no sense of identity growing up. But the point is, I actually, at this point, and when I got more cartoony, more abstract like this, I found I had more in common the way I approach my work with somebody like Bill Sienkiewicz than my heroes even, except for Mignola. Obviously, Mignola is such a huge influence on me. One of those reasons is because he was an influence on me when I first started reading comics. It was like Web of Spider-Man or something. There were some backups, and his work just always stood out as unique and different. So even before Mike was drawing, the way that Mike was known to draw. So I'm correlating here. I was a fan of his, and I was imitating and learning from him, and just in awe of what he does. And that's only increased over the years, and you can see his influence on my work, and I used to fight it. I used to try to consciously, I want to be me. I don't want to imitate him. I don't think I'm imitating him. I just think he's my school, Mike Mignola is just where I learned a lot of techniques and stuff. And as he learned stuff, I learned stuff watching him. And Michael, I remember we had this conversation that he learned on the job. Look at his early work, and it's just, you can just see the growth and him figuring stuff out. And I was the same way, because I started out super young, and so much of what I did, I learned as I was doing it. So, all that's to say, the influence that Mike has on me is like part of my DNA. It's not so much a conscious choice, like, oh man, I like his style and I want to copy it. I just grew with it. I grew up with it. And I grew with him as he grew as an artist and a creator. I was just looking at Amazing Scrawn Head, the special edition today, and man, he's so good at, I don't know, esoteric stuff. And I don't just mean occult things. I mean like draw an onion. I think it is. The second it wasn't because I usually don't talk while I'm working. And for some reason this time I decided to be a little babbly. Hi, we're talking about rulers and how I don't like to use straight lines. And you can tell because I have a beat this shit ruler with like chunks missing out of the corners. I should just get a new one. But I'm going to use the ruler here on a couple of things. Definitely on the gun. And I took my original sketch here and then I finished it in Clip Studio. I even did a rough ink job. I mean, this is slightly kind of inked on some of these figures. And one of the things I love about Clip Studio is they have this tool, the perspective tool. So with that perspective tool, I went over my loose sketches of buildings and then was able to create this perspective grid and stuff. It's super useful. I think Clip Studio and I'm guessing Procreate, the two of them together are just the most powerful tools you can use making comics. I still use Photoshop, but it's really just for finishing up. Also because it's easier to see on my big screen, my big Cintiq, rather than my iPad, which I do most of my digital work on. And, you know, because I've been using it longer than anything else, I'm just more used to the filters and little things like that. But Clip Studio and Procreate, they're the bomb. I have to be really careful with this. These are one of the pens that, because I've gone over it a few times, it's going to take forever to ink. I mean, to dry. And especially because of humidity in the air, that will also affect how long it takes for it to dry. So sometimes it'll look dry and then I'll fucking smear it. I hate it. It's also one of the reasons why I wear the glove, partially to keep lead off of my skin, because that's probably not good for me in the long term. But it also helps to dry stuff, and sometimes I'll even see where it picked up the ink right there, and that'll just help dry the excess ink. I'm not too confident in this gun. I also like mixing a combination of ruler and freehand. That way, for something like that's this cold steel object, there's still some humanity in it. There's still some wobbliness that makes it feel subconsciously real. Right now I've got a Ladytron. And I think that's important, the freehand feel to stuff. Even if the reader doesn't initially recognize it, it's kind of like CGI in films. I think there's a certain amount of coldness that anybody can pick up when everything is all digital. And that being said, nothing wrong with that. That people like the perfection. Lots of readers like the perfection. Lots of readers hate my work because it isn't perfect, you know. And then there's other digital artists who work to make sure that it flows, that it feels very organic. So it's not a criticism at all. It's just a particular approach, you know. And this is how I approach it. Boy, I'm gonna have to touch this gun up. So over here is where the bullet case will eject. that little bit of lines here, that gives it, it's going to give it a sense of things moving that way and some reflectiveness to the gun. And this is just to indicate a little light under the gun. I don't know if I'm going to keep that or not. I don't know if it really works. It's one of those things I'll be able to tell easier in once I scan it. Alright, I'm going to try and do this part here, and then we'll call it for now. I'm going to bust out the circle templates here, but I'm concerned about some of that ink drying before I lay something flat on here and it gets smeared. Especially here, I can see that's still not dry. A little tiny spot here, and that gets smeared this way or something. That would suck. This part of the gun, the trigger guard, I guess it's called. I don't know. Make sure that is drawn cold with the pen. I'm just going to give this a little highlight there. Maybe a tiny bit down there. We'll see how it looks when it's all done. Alright. Some old school Duran Duran. I do listen to new stuff. But most of it, I gotta admit, is older stuff. But, you know, I'm an older dude. I will unironically listen to some classic rock. I'm from Jersey. What are you gonna do? I love doing these chunky fingernails. A lot of times when I'm laying down lines, especially like a longer line, like what we'll see over here, like it's a little wobbly. There we go, that's better. I'm not looking at the brush as I'm doing it. I'm actually kind of looking where it's going to go. So like as I'm bringing the brush down here, my eye is actually like here. I can't say how far ahead of the brush it actually is, but it's actually not at the tip of the brush. I'm looking at where it's going, and that really helps. Also, a lot of the movement isn't just in my wrist. It's sometimes it's my whole arm giving me a smooth line, like something like that. All depends on the line, how I'm feeling. Always have to count my fingers too. 1, 2, 3, 4. And his thumb is there. That's a fucked up hand, but okay, it's working. It's the illusion that works. I'm going to leave an indication of his hand that's in the black here. And then this chunky, let me see, so his knuckles will kind of come around here. His wrist would go in there, but this is all black. Now, this is the exterior of his jacket. See, I want to give this a little S curve, just a little bit of a curve, because it just went straight like that. It works, but it could get lost in these other lines that'll end up in the back. So this little chunk of line here is meant to indicate his palm, his left palm. Notice I said meant to indicate, meaning I don't know if it will work or not. Then the rest of his hand would kind of come somewhere in here. I'm not too worried about it. I just need the shape, the outline. And then this line represents his left arm jacket or whatever. Alright, I'm gonna call it in a bit, so because my battery's probably dead. That's pretty close. So I'm gonna spin this part just let's fill in some black so you can get a sense of what. Boy, I hope this is dry. You'll get a sense of what this is gonna look like. Let me do it the hand first, because I think the hand's probably the least bit that looks like a hand, or finished, or complete, or the least bit that'll give you an idea what this will actually look like. This piece is going to go on sale soon.